You just in time. Oh, no. Yeah.
Okay, good morning. This is the second half of the morning session for Tenant Natural Resources and Energy. It's Thursday, February 8th, 2024. We finished our work for the morning, for the most part, on S213, other than some conversation about wanted to talk about how we figure out what things cost, because costs and resources has come up every conversation from the agency side. And I think we've been 101% genuine in saying we want to provide you with resources to be successful. What does it take? How do we phase it? What steps and what order makes the most sense to get to the end point that I think actually all of us share, agency and us, which is high quality management of the integrated resource known as our water rights. Including avoiding future construction in places that put people in harm's way and have adverse impacts on upstream and downstream neighbors. So, Senator Watson, you brought up an idea that I thought you were around trying to assess the costs. You want to tell the rest of the committee?
Thinking about asking for a fiscal note for 213. I support this. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think the tricky thing, I think, will be a little bit to define what program we're gonna ask them to cost out on our behalf. I am gonna meet offline with agency and some advocates this afternoon, and Michael Grady, our lawyer, joining, see if we can get some just like what we saw happen here. Could we get some compromise and discussion when it's not formal committee time, and come up with a different, a modified plan and move forward. So if that's my hope, that we can have something from Michael. But fingers crossed. I know he's incredibly busy. I'm assuming it, but in an ideal world, we have that conversation. People would say yes, and we make some motion in the right direction, and he might be able to redraft our bill for tomorrow. And in that case, then I ask JFO to take that, maybe and help us figure costs.
Sorry.
Does that make sense? Or you think something's cooking it?
Something is cooking. So Michael Grady is working on a new draft. I know we have some other language like around studies
Yeah,
that.
like the UVA stuff.
Yeah, and potentially drawing in like a study of the emergency action plans for dams.
Yeah,
And it seems like if we're gonna.
the Amy Pritchett bill, which
Yeah, and now I don't know if you had mentioned it's like you can look at particular aspects for the fiscal note. I mean, I guess I had thought about, let's look at the whole thing, but maybe
Well,
you don't want to include the studies, I don't know,
that would be fine. I think I'm sort of thinking sympathetically on behalf of JFO.
oh, because that's a lot.
Provide them with specifications that they can say, oh, I get what you're asking.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes we can make fuzzy requests and it's hard for them
Sure,
to figure
I trust your judgment.
it out. But I am things that were sort of in the hopper to consider adding, and I made a note from before. One of them was last week, it was for this week, and it was, we wanted to look at mapping. We were talking about how energy siting might relate to that mapping, which is coming up down the hall in finance, like what are we doing for energy mapping and how does that affect, oh wait, it's 236. And then UVA, and then auditors report. So Senator White, you were spearheading the auditors report stuff. Have you looked at what you were interested in from that report? And does our current draft, I know a number of things rolled in already. So are you seeing anything missing that you were hoping to see?
No, I think, yeah, I feel good about it, yeah.
Okay, so
I do want to concur with Senator Watson's point about S290, and if we can include it. But that's the only dam safety related piece that doesn't feel like it's been addressed, and I know we haven't had the auditor come in and talk about the report. Which, but we have the sections in it, so.
Yeah.
That I was most concerned about.
I think given that we've moved it in. well, I don't know that we need this, I don't know if there's any benefit to have the auditor talk to us about.
Yeah.
Just like keeping.
We've already,
Yeah,
seemed like I really like this vision.
Yeah.
yeah, I think what I found most compelling about the report was it felt a little bit like investigative journalism on the program itself, and. The executive summary is helpful, I would like, and I can do this offline. I would like to understand what the impetus was for them exploring the topic in the first place, because this preceded. What we had happen over the summer.
Yeah.
So what were the things that caused them to identify this, and would they be? Are they going to look at it again in a few years kind of conversation? Because the accountability when it comes to dam safety feels like one of the areas we're trying to improve. Both for the people who have the dams themselves, who are the property owners, the agencies who are regulating them being the same. I mean, it just feels like. I'm happy that the auditor identified this is concern, but.
Well, let's schedule time.
Okay.
All right, so there's the auditor and the auditor's report, so we have those things in the bill, S290, which I think we said, yeah, who would. Makes complete sense that you'd want to have a coordinated way of creating an emergency action plan and then getting it to the right people. And. So we have had Senator Pershing again to go through that, but they might do a lot there.
Yeah.
Does anyone in the committee not want to see that language as part of the bill? Let me get right to it here. Well, it's a study committee on dam emergency action planning. So it's a study committee to take emergency action plans are required by the rules and safety rules and figure out who's gonna do what with them, when, where, how. Cause that came up a lot this time.
And
Yeah,
and just to add to that, my understanding is that as it is, the plans are given to the municipality that the dam is located in, even if the implications are for multiple towns downstream.
Yeah.
And so this is looking at a more regional approach to the emergency action.
right. Right, so that's how it, I don't know how far they have to travel now, like if your dams, if Wrightsville's, and is that entirely located within Montpelier? Or,
Wrightsville?
Yeah.
No, it's not in Montpelier.
yes, where's the, I don't know where the line is going north.
Well, it's before Wrightsville.
The important thing is it's upstream.
It's upstream,
I
right?
think, yeah,
Let's.
but it's.
Is that Elmore?
Middlesex.
Middlesex. I heard Middlesex.
Yeah,
It is.
and then.
It's on the intersection of the borders of Montpelier, Middlesex, and East.
Montpelier.
East Montpelier.
I had made a comment during that, when we walked through with Andy about. You know, is it redundant to have a definition of because they're looking at like the high hazard dams that are. That would affect a large population, and I was like, that's
Yeah.
duplicative, but I actually don't think that's true, I think. Because the high hazard was like, even if one person dies,
Right.
man, loss of life, to be fair, maybe we should be doing this. For all of the high hazard dams, regardless of population, but at least as written, I don't think it's redundant. I made that, I wanted to make sure I. Said that.
And now that we're back. To this, that, I know I'm so stuck in this Venn diagram, but it's high hazard,
Yes.
poor
For
condition.
conditions,
Yes.
yeah,
And
it's very scary.
it would be, I don't have a clear picture of. It's not that it's in the. Well, it could be in the bill, just, is there a priority list developed and. An action plan I don't wanna add unuseful paperwork. I'm guessing that's the way they operate, but maybe we can have them confirm that yeah, they've done exactly what you would think, something like that, and they have a prioritized list of with times to get things.
I know they had given us, I believe, Mr. Green.
Yeah.
Had shown us a slide that had those listed out, and I think that's why Senator McCormick and I had reacted so viscerally with Silver Lake being at the top.
Yeah.
Of that list, seemingly not alphabetically, but. That list I think they do have, which is, so I was trying to pull it up from our committee page, but. Can we put those in statute or something, or is that?
If this is, I mean. So let's check back in and just see what they do with their prioritized list. I don't wanna get into micromanaging. But but it would be reassuring to know, yeah, that's exactly how we do it, and that's. But the other thing was cost, like how fast do we make it through that list? There is some discretion there, I would think. How well funded is the revolving loan fund? What's the relationship between the revolving loan fund and making our way through that list faster or slower? I think.
Yeah.
And I would like to understand about that.
So yes, I found the list that he had given us, and I think this is all of them.
That are in that.
That are in the high hazard potential and rated poor, and he tells us the other angle to this that I don't know where you feel it is important, but some of them are privately owned and some of them are state owned, so I almost feel like the state owned ones
Mhm.
are even more like, come on. Like,
Yeah.
we should be prioritizing those within that.
So let's get information on cost and schedule for those dams that are high hazard and most at risk for failure, even if it's remote, it's still be good to know.
Just to anchor where this particular bill came from, because I bet you that the Marshfield Dam is not on that list.
Is it called the Marshfield
I
Dam?
believe, Molly's Fall, no, I don't think it's
I don't,
Marshfield, I think it's Marshfield.
I'm not
Anyways.
this because it's on the GMP and.
Yes, and it's exactly, and it's not in the poor category. But as the study goes, I mean, maybe some priority is given to,
I see.
like. The ones in the Venn diagram, if they also are, gonna affect a lot of people, but I just would not wanna leave out. Particularly the people for whom like this, that raised this, as an issue.
Oh, yes, I see they have.
Well, like Waterbury, I think the walk of like for Waterbury,
Would be,
a
oh
walk of like something like 1,500.
my gosh, so,
Yeah, I'm
right,
remembering how
Yeah.
to air.
well, and
Yeah,
the
right.
likelihood of those people all being in water, it seems like that would extend beyond Waterbury, essentially. So, which is the point of this.
Okay.
And so
Yeah,
maybe
it's interesting because they rank it, I would have to look back, but he has the dam risk score and Wrightsville has multiple asterisks next to it. And is listed higher than some of those other dams, but it's the developed risk ranking that they use for project prioritization. So I don't, it looks like it is pretty high for them, but I don't understand.
if I can, sorry, but thank you for opining about this a little bit, but because the structure of this bill is about looking at a regional approach to the emergency action plans. And so maybe the prioritization is about, the high risk dams that have implications across municipal lines, right? That, because theoretically, if if all of the risk is within one municipality, that should be managed by that one municipality. But if it has regional implications, that's what this bill is about. I'm just thinking out loud.
Great, yeah, the other way. I think about where we are at the moment is, what questions do we have? And who do we need to hear from to get answers? Like one of the ones I want to write down this morning is someone who owns a dock business. So, well, let me pause, so we up there, we'll chase that, we'll ask Mr. Green if he can just fill us in, that, the program seems very thoughtful, so I'm guessing they thought about all this stuff, but it may not be. If his scope is limited to making sure a dam has an emergency action plan, but not necessarily being responsible for where it goes, how it gets used, how well it's communicated, how well the response is coordinated. The response coordination is what you're doing, I think, right, in GovOps.
To disasters.
Disaster, more generally.
Yeah, and so part of that is looking at reverse,
Yeah.
reverse 911, and
What's reverse 911?
that's when, instead of you calling them,
They-
they push out a message, like, you need to go back to.
We've learned a lot about some of the pros and cons of our certain emergency communication systems on the Government Operations Committee.
Okay, so in terms of a list of witnesses we would like. Or questions we have, who do we want to hear from? So dock owners comes to mind immediately for me. Anything else anyone can think of?
Well, there's as I'm starting to have conversations with people about 213 and the vision of where we're going with this, which I think is, I mean, the administration agrees, like, this is where we need to end up. This is maybe not a particular witness, but it's just a resource that I'm imagining, which I think it would be helpful to like have a couple of like example like either maps or locale, like what this would mean for, Northfield, what this would mean for, for like a big town with a developed downtown, or a small town,
For example,
and I think it would be good to have some examples we could point at. Because people are worried that like, my whole town is in the floodplain, what does this mean? And what is, so just to like,
okay,
that help us be able to point at things and be like, no, we want you to not build right there, that's no good, but over here is okay, like, just like that kind of thing, I think would be. Like what tools can we use to help at least communicate what the vision is?
right, for instance, we heard about building the fringe yesterday.
Yeah.
And how you could build a foot above, or 2 feet above, or 3 feet above.
And then it's not necessarily prohibiting all building, I mean, it's just, this is what you need to do.
Which doesn't. Get you from the next spot.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
What was that effect, the Lucretius
Lucretius,
effect, like? People don't imagine the worst being worse than the last.
I remember the last, yeah. We always measure from the last flood as opposed. Flood we haven't seen yet.
Another item on our loose ends list or something like that.
We're just gonna sell it,
The liability issue with dam. So I
Oh,
gave
yes.
our bill to Senator Sears, and I asked him to take a look at the liability language. And his note back to me is, Chris, this is okay, but it's similar to the bill on, oh, you should find out you can do what you do if the landowner can't buy insurance. So that was the insurability question. Well, I think you had mentioned the whole idea of pulling that change. Yeah.
Yes, Senator Gray, I did note that I would be comfortable with removing that if we had to,
Yeah,
if we felt
right,
the need to.
right.
saying,
Yes, and I think I am sad to hear that again, insurance companies have the ability to do the thing, I don't know, insurance companies, I respect the work that they do, but it feels like. There are situations in which they are able to. Say that we will not insure something and it puts people at a greater risk. Because they will make less profit in the long run by having to cover those things. So that has some tension for me, but I also respect that I don't want our utility companies to be without insurance. Because I would prefer not to have my rates increase because they have to pay a huge premium or self-insure. So I feel like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and my heart says we should have a stricter liability standard. However, it seems like the risk of doing that is great, but I hope that if we, I like the way that the strict liability conversation history started. The conversation about accountability for the folks who own those dams, it's tough.
Well,
Nothing new about that.
Yeah, and exactly, it seems like you folks may have been dealing with this issue for a while.
well, for instance, VLCT,
They cover the profitable stuff and stuff, but they're afraid to cover it. We send senators and representatives in to pay for the damages after the flood.
Yeah. It seems to be the,
privatize the profits, socialize the costs. Well worn, yeah,
On the dams. I'm 95% of the way there, but I would like to get 100% in terms of making sure my understanding is right. About the vocabulary we use for risk. Essentially, the risk always involves three things. There's benefit. What do you get for taking the risk? And then there is the likelihood of something going on. And the consequences of something going on. And there are things where the consequences of something going wrong are enormous, but the likelihood is very small and the benefit is great. That's why we get on.
All three of which are opinions.
Well, they're estimates, and there are different degrees there's some opinions are more informed than others, some are more logically defensible than others. So anyway, I wanna make sure I understand the vocabulary we're using. Sure, yeah, okay. Another thing is, we have, wake boats in the bill, we have talking about wake boats. There's wake boats.
your Elkhart.
No, that's not, he's not.
Oh, you're not.
No, I'm not on it.
Regular.
No, but there's a reference to wake boats in this, 213.
or, you know, the.
Did I lose?
No, but it's come up multiple times.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's actually, I don't believe there's a section on wake boats in the.
I thought there was. Well, in any case, it's an issue before us and it's a water issue, maybe it should be. And in particular, what I'm wondering about is the distances we're requiring from the shore. And the argument against the narrower the non-use corridor. It's the argument that's used against that is that it would make wake boats banned from various waters that they'd be allowed on if we use the narrower, and my sense is, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, maybe they don't belong. Yeah,
So the rule is proposed, you know, A and R calculated based on the setback requirements and things like that, and then defining a wake boat zone. That of the roughly 800
Yeah.
lakes and ponds, only 30 would be allowed, wake boats would be allowed on, and then the 30 can petition individually to preclude them from being on. But so the only thing I'm happy about the conversation about, we don't have an oar in the water on this committee. We could write, you know, Elkhart could send a letter of. I forget what, it's sort of an advisory letter to the committee of jurisdiction and say, we're generally in the form of, we're approving this rule. because it meets the requirements of the APA. But we also see consequences related to it that are would be of interest to this committee of jurisdiction, and they're sort of flagging it, that we should take a look. We haven't talked actually about that enough, or in this one, but
But that concern that if we hold with this standard, then that means. Some people won't be able to do what they want in certain ways. My sense is, anytime the discussion is about rights. Anytime the discussion is about rights, it's not rights versus not rights. It's, the question is who's right to do what to whom. So are we conflicting with the right to use a wake boat, presuming there is such a right? What about the right to have your children swim
No,
right off your yard?
it's all I
What about the right to kayak? What are, okay, so, they. And invariably, someone says, well, this is big government taking away my rights. Invariably, that person wants the right to bully other people. And I think we have to look at that.
yes, well, I would be interested, I think there's a House bill that, actually, I don't want to verify because I've talked to someone about it, but not read it. I think it's Representative Madfield's bill, and I think it provides a statutory right for like an opt-out, as opposed to going. Like, the reason we have this rule at Elkhart is because a group petitioned to have rulemaking done. And there's two ways to petition. You can petition Elkhart directly as an individual. I think it only takes an individual for it's the individual here. You're right, but it's
Not this one.
yeah. And then you can also petition an agency to do rulemaking. It was petitioning Elkhart, ANR directly to do rulemaking, collecting the rule that's now
Yeah,
in front of Elkhart and controversy. So, I would, in order to not go onto a topic we could disappear into for a while,
yeah,
I would propose that once we have this bill out. Then we have Michael Grady in to walk through the intricacies of. The question, because he was in Elkhart today helping. Clarify existing statute and. How it influences, there's no statement of legislative intent, right, because it didn't come from legislators. But with these legislative extent. Intent expressed in the following existing statute. That was our legislative intent. Prior to even thinking about the world of wake ups, and so it has to be honored. So it gets nuanced.
I apologize for raising this issue in a discussion of the bill of which it is not included. I was. Reading something this morning, I thought it was this bill.
Well,
There was a thing about it, but nevertheless, since I had the floor, I do think we need to, sure.
yeah, no, it's understandable, that we've been talking about a lot of things, so, on the insurance piece, the liability piece, I'd just like us to think over. That a little more, I don't know if there's anything that we can do that doesn't lead to uninsurability, but would quicken people's sensibility of, oh, I do have a liability here that I need to manage. I think part of the shift was to encourage people to realize they have a liability when they want to dam, and therefore to maintain it or take it down. And I don't know, short of shifting all of it. Whenever you're going strictly severably, I hope that's the only way we can. Make people know where. So let's ask Mike O'Grady about that one.
Are there other options?
Yeah, are there other options that aren't quite as,
It would be as,
troublesome? Like if you can't get insurance,
that's.
that's a genuine, like I believe
That's
this was, I think Ken Brady said to us. There, that towns would have 200 names that he thought would be uninsurable. So let's I wanna verify that one.
Mr. Chair, one of the pieces that I've heard from folks who do have dam ownership is that even bringing up the conversation of moving to strict liability, having that conversation with their insurer can even cause them to be sensitive enough to reconsider rates. Like even open up that conversation. Is there a? Yeah, I don't
Not
know.
like calling your car insurance to say, if I were to have an accident
Yes,
in a parking lot, that
well,
would my rates be affected if I were doing a claim?
and what I'm hearing is that they're worried their rates would go up just by asking the question. So I'm wondering, is there an entity or like, can the state treasurer ask insurers? I mean, is there a
DFR,
yeah, is there someone who can ask that is not actually being insured? That could ask that question of insurers so that we don't put those people and entities at risk of having increased rates by even opening the conversation? I don't know.
I'll reach out to DFR.
I think that,
They're frequent flyers in down the hall of finance, so. Give them a call. See what they can contribute, Did the auditor address liability in that report? I don't
I
remember.
think they. Maybe I'll take a look, I think he did, or at least comment.
Alright, so auditor and auditors report, that's making those, bringing those into the bill, 290. Sarah Watson, you already had Mike already generate language on UVA.
Yes.
Okay, so if, we should go through that with you and him.
Okay.
And see about we do that with the bill. Second with Mr. Green, well, just getting clarity on how things are prioritized, what the budget looks like, and the timeline for addressing those. Dock owners, JFO for fiscal note. Examples of where this can pass, what does it look like for a small town, 100,000 liability. Which includes doubling back to the LCT. General requirements, risk definition, clarifications, and DFR on insurance. I think we better adjourn before we think of anything else.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything on liability, I don't think they have a recommendation on this item. They have things around. Like. The need for inspection dates and everything, I think if you felt that you had a stricter standard of liability, you would probably. Be more reticent, or you would be more likely to have inspections, and that's the accountability mechanism, but they don't have a recommendation.
Here it is. There we go, McCormick, McDonald, and now.
You got Watson and White and McCormick and McDonald, like you can't win.
Jeremy, down, you have a sixth sense for how an eighth grader could subvert us. I mean, all
Cents or sick?
well, yeah,
Or both.
your choice. How an eighth grader would subvert any law that we've ever been writing in here. Yeah. And anything you want to share with us about like, all well intended, but maybe it's not well constructed from some particular point of view.
No, I think when you get into big stuff, I just said, I want to know here that, nuclear power. No entity will insure. Nuclear plants. They won't do it. If people were more prudent. They wouldn't permit anything that was uninsurable. And, but we do all the time. So, build a nuclear plant, and if it blows up. You know, you wash your hands on it, then it's left to the federal government. The two ways to pay for it that are being argued over is whoever the electric users that use the electricity collectively would pay for it, and the other is that all electric users pay for it, or you have a national tax to pay for it. It's on soda or soccer balls or
Right.
but we're willing to do and take the benefits of these big things that are uninsurable, and then pay for them later, and point fingers at each other.
Well, now that you're saying that, it makes me wonder if there's not like a national dam insurance program, but it's national flood insurance
Well, the
program.
damn insurance program has been worth it there.
It would seem like, well, what happens if the Hoover Dam comes down, you know, really large thing, they call it really large problem.
We could say, we'll never let this happen again, and then we do.
Okay, well. I don't have anything more on our to-do list other than S-146, I would mention that. I'm gonna check in on 146, which we shipped last year up there. I know they're very busy now, but I'm hoping that post crossover, we would see that bill come back. And I'm just looking our way forward to see if there's anything more. And I'm hoping that we'll have a draft, if not draft language, a draft. Remodeled plan for implementation of 213. I'm getting ready to work with scissors and paper and make. Okay,